Greetings. Thank you for joining us again. Now, today we're having a look at an object you might have seen before on a previous video, and if you haven't, I urge you to check out my previous videos. The object in question is a little under the sink boiler that I fitted in the old kitchen. Now unfortunately that under the sink boiler decided to stop working, and today we're going to investigate exactly why that happened. So let's get into it. Okay, here's the old kitchen and here's where the sink used to be. As you can see, I have already ripped out the old sink unit, well part of it anyway, and the boiler, and discovered part of the reason why the unit failed. So we'll get into that very shortly. Sorry I didn't video the dismantling of the kitchen unit. I'm sure very few people want to see me do that. It was just me and a chainsaw, and great fun. Just before we move on, I thought I'd just zoom in on the plant we've got in the kitchen, the old kitchen at the moment, growing under the full spectrum grow lamp. It's culantro and it's native to Puerto Rico and parts of India, I believe. And it's great. It's a great plant. You can use it as a herb in place of the traditional European coriander. Coriander is quite prone to green fly, black fly, any kind of fly you want to mention. And you can get an infestation or take it out in a couple of days, a couple of hours even. Culantro, not quite as prone. In fact, this one's got an infestation of black fly. Not that the camera will pick that up, but it's durable. It doesn't seem to affect this one little bit. It just carries on regardless. One of the best sort of plants with lots of weed-like resistant characteristics. Yeah, so every single leaf is highly flavoured. So you only need a couple of these in each, say for example, if you're growing for your own consumption, you only need a couple of leaves in a given meal to give it a nice little kick. Yeah. Tastes like coriander, but just a little more wholesome. Can't describe it really, but if you get a chance, you can buy the leaves online or you can grow your own. I found that it didn't do too well this summer, hence the need for the grow lamp. But it's been doing okay in the kitchen here. You just got to keep it in a reasonably controlled environment, not too wet. Had it growing in the greenhouse for a while, but it got some mould on the soil, which I've never seen happen before. But yeah, had to pull out all that soil, treat the land as best I could with this in the pot, and it's come back from the dead. So that should be good for our Christmas dinner. The under the sink water heater was doing quite well for a while. Unfortunately, there were things working against it in a big way. And one of those things was a leaky drain. So whoever designed that old kitchen, they need a slap, because the drain and the U-bend that was designed in such a way there was no way that thing was going together and not leaking. So every time we ran water in the sink, did the washing of the dishes, anything, it was drip, drip, drip into the cabinet underneath. And of course it was dripping straight on this dear old under the sink water heater. Now that wouldn't be a problem normally, because it's built to be, to a certain extent, water resistant. Not waterproof, but water resistant. And there's certain places you don't want water falling. Now in this case, it wasn't falling on the top that was the problem. You might think, it sits up like this, you might think that falling on the top might be a problem, when it is, because you've got the rheostat here that controls the temperature it heats up to, which is one thing. But in the case of the leak that we were having, it actually dripped not directly onto this boiler but onto the floor, and then caused a puddle underneath the water heater. And that was what was the problem, because eventually it sat in about 0.5 centimetre of water. Not critical, you'd think, but when you see how it came together, how it was designed, you can see how that was a problem. So obviously you see I've had it apart already. I didn't think of recording that. It's got 4 screws, 2 on the bottom here and 2 on the top. They're of the cheaper sort, but never mind. I think I'll be replacing those when I put it back together. Somebody decided to put one of those gnarly little, it's one of those security screws in each case, so they don't come out easily. Let's take the top off and have a look. So it's the simplest of designs. It's a very straightforward circuit. You've got a controller on the front, of course, and a light which shows when it's on. And I should put it down so you can see better. Nothing really much to be said about that. It's relatively water resistant. You wouldn't want a lot of water dripping on the top of this. Let's put it like that, just in case it gets in that switch, because it's not IP whatever resistant. And it sits normally like this, upright. The bottle itself is smothered in foam, which is of course quite good insulation. This foam, although it looks insubstantial, you think, well, there's plenty more room in the case, they could put more in there. It's actually good enough to keep the water warm in here for a good 8 hours. You know, once you've warmed it up, it'll still be warm. If you turn it off and leave it, it'll still be warm in the morning, which is really quite good. Water comes in through the blue, of course, and goes out through the red. And the whole unit comes with this proprietary tap. And it's basically to avoid having pressure release expansion chambers and expensive things like that. They've got a continuously dripping tap, which is really rather annoying, especially when you have to work near it in the day. All you can hear is drip, drip, drip. Very irritating. And of course, if you're paying by the milliliter, as we all do, well, as a lot of us do, for water, you don't want to hear that pennies dripping away for no good reason. Plus, it eventually starts to cycle on and off when it doesn't need to, because of course, you know, cold water's getting into the system. See, it's got a plastic chamber. Now I should just undo that. It's got an interesting lock. I'll just see if we can get this to function for me. Like a locking strap. There we go. Let's move the wires out of the way. It rusted, which gives you a clue as to what happened. We were getting some water on top of the unit, not substantial, but it's the water that ran into the puddle under the unit that was the problem. Come on, baby. Here we go. So off with it. It's not very thick, not very thick polystyrene, but you know, it does the trick. It's no thicker, I'd say, than the average thermos you might take your dinner into to work. Right, there we go again. Plastic chamber, good thick plastic, nothing wrong there, that's nice. I think maybe these connections might have been leaking as well. Now they clip on and they're not screwed on with a thread, or they literally clip on, so there is when you try and put the connections onto these brass connections here, when you try and fix the tap, there is the risk that this whole thing twists around, and it's quite concerning because you wonder whether you're causing leaks, and of course you won't find out till later on because the slow leak happens that way. In fact, the leak can actually happen within the case, and it might be some time before you notice a little runoff, which brings me to how it failed. Just pop that over there for a second. So how it failed, as you might have seen, up the top we've got fully exposed, not at all encapsulated, screw threaded junction block, which joins the whole unit with the mains cable. So you can change out the mains cable quite easily if you wanted to, if you needed to. That's a risk as far as I'm concerned, because of course if water gets in through this rubber grommet, I don't believe it's perfect, so if you get a drip on top of this unit from the tap, sure, it can actually get down and cause an electric shock one way or the other. I believe that's a potential risk. They probably thought, well, you know, fine, okay, we'll let that one go. I'm going to be encapsulating those before I put this back together. I don't want to risk that. No, so the wires go from that, and by the rheostat, of course, to control it down to the element in the bottom. Now the element, it's still wet. It's been drying in the corner, in this damp kitchen for some time. It goes down to the bottom now. As you can see, we've got spade connectors, well, what amounts of spade connectors, and a sort of push fit connector. And they've literally been sitting in the water and it rusted off. The wires literally, I pulled this one away. There was nothing left of the connector. I thought maybe it had overheated, but no, it's literally just rusted the spade connector. So I should be able to fix that, assuming the element's not burned out. I don't believe it is. Yeah. So it can be fixed, but the fact that these wires sit so close, and it's cheap spade connectors, it sits so close to the bottom of the unit, potentially in a dripping water, means that it will fail pretty quickly. And again, because they haven't encapsulated these wires, it means the unit is more likely to fail, and it is more likely to give you an electric shock if you touch that puddle. Because what do you do if you go in the cupboard and you find, oh goodness, there's a puddle right behind this, the water heater? Well, you might just touch it before you turn off the power. You might think, I'll just chuck a towel down there, I'll soak up the water, and then you come back to it later, you touch a damp towel, and all of a sudden you're getting a massive mains electric shock. Yeah, not impressed. So I'm glad I haven't bought another one of these, because well, it's just dangerous. Like I say, when I put it back together, I use better wires, better connectors, clean this connectors up a bit, and encapsulate it in some of the gel you can buy. You can just pour in and seal it. It will help a little bit, even if it won't make it perfect. Our new boiler, our new water heater, this isn't boilered, is that thing on the wall over there. Now, of course, if there's any leaks, it's going to drip out the bottom. So if it is going to run past any wires, at least it won't be lingering, which in my book is a good idea. Now, ignore the wiring here, that's just to tide us through until I get all the wiring coming from above. Yeah. Stay safe, everyone. Anyway, thank you for joining me today to look at this, and I shall fix it and put some pictures in after this little piece here. Hope you enjoy, have a great week, and see you soon.